the reason you're not getting pregnant has absolutely nothing to do with anything your doctor has tested for? What if the tests being run for both of you aren't even the right tests? What if the questions being asked aren't even the right questions? What if tracking and timing aren't even the issue? That is exactly what happened to the couple whose story I'm going to share with you today. They had conceived their first child easily and naturally. And then when they were ready for their second, crickets. Month after month went by with no positive test and well over a year of trying. Her hormones looked totally fine. Her cycles were regular. She knew she was ovulating. Everything that her doctors could see looked completely normal. But she had other symptoms going on that didn't seem related to her not getting pregnant, but they absolutely were, which we're going to talk about later in this episode. But here's the thing. Everything her doctors were testing, every panel, every scan, every workup, was the wrong thing to be testing. And further, nobody asked what was going on in her husband's body. Nobody had asked what had changed in their home environment. Nobody even thought to look for things that don't even show up on a standard fertility workup. In either of them, nobody was asking the right questions at all. So what if the reason you haven't been able to get pregnant isn't about what's already been tested, but about what hasn't been tested? That's what this episode is all about. And by the end of it, you may never look at your fertility journey the same way again. Before I dive in though, can I ask you a huge favor? If you are not yet subscribed, do that right now. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you never miss a single episode when I drop them. And when you subscribe, it tells YouTube to show this content to more people who are looking for it and who really need it. And it really helps me get the information out there. I really do appreciate it so much. If you're new here, my name's Tamy Anderson, and I have the best job in the entire world. I help couples trying to conceive make babies. I'm at the intersection of functional health, mindset, and nervous system rewiring, which is the full picture that you actually need, and almost nobody's talking about it. All right, so let's get into it. When we started working together, Lindsay was 33. She had a 3-year-old daughter that she had conceived easily and naturally and had been trying to conceive baby number 2 unsuccessfully for almost 2 years. She is that quintessential high-intensity, high-achieving, performance-driven, spreadsheet-making, know-all-the-numbers kind of woman. The kind of woman who's just on top of it all. She knew all her numbers, tracked her cycles, timed everything right. She was ovulating, her hormones looked fine on paper, and her doctors just had no explanation for why she wasn't conceiving that second baby. It just didn't make sense. So on our first call together, she had some pretty telling clues as to what might be going on. She's never managed stress well. She knew that about herself. And she said she's always struggled with a lot of anxiety, but that had gotten a lot worse in the last couple of years, which she wasn't really sure whether that was attributed to running her business and being a mom or something else entirely. Perfectionism was her identity, but she also had a long history of constipation and other gut issues, and she'd been depending on Miralax on an almost daily basis for years just so that she could poop. She also had allergies. So those were some of the symptoms that she was dealing with. Her 3-year-old daughter also gave us some clues though, because she was displaying some really strange symptoms. Her husband Parker was also struggling with really bad brain fog and fatigue and lack of motivation, which were just really not his normal. And she had that woman's intuition that something else might be going on that had absolutely nothing to do with her cycles. So we started with some investigation into what was going on in Lindsay's body. But I stressed that we also needed to do a deeper investigation into what was going on in her husband's body as well, because he's 50% of the baby making equation, right? And his body mattered too. So we ran some labs, and I'm going to walk through what we found. Lindsay's stool testing revealed significant gut inflammation and intestinal permeability, what you've probably heard referred to as leaky gut, and a gnarly parasite called Blastocystis hominis, commonly referred to as blasto. Her mycotoxin panel showed elevated ochratoxin A, which is a mycotoxin from mold that affects virtually every single system of the entire body from head to toe, including, yes, the reproductive system. And her organic acids test showed that she was actively colonized with mold, meaning that mold was not just a past exposure, it was still living inside her body, actively producing toxins. She also had candida overgrowth, which, because it's a secondary infection, is almost always driven by mold and other gut issues and immune disruption. She had mitochondrial damage, low brain chemistry across the board. Her dopamine and serotonin markers were both low, and multiple nutritional deficiencies. Now, I want you to sit with that picture for just a second, because here's a woman whose conventional labs looked totally fine, whose hormones looked completely normal, whose fertility specialist found nothing abnormal that would explain why she wasn't conceiving. But underneath the surface, she had mold colonizing her body. She had a gnarly parasite stealing nutrients and wreaking all sorts of havoc. She had a leaky gut lining, depleted neurotransmitters, and mitochondrial damage. Every single one of those things has a downstream impact on hormones, on the uterine environment, on implantation, and on the body's capacity to sustain a pregnancy. And none of those things had ever been considered by the specialist that she'd seen. All right, so before we get into what else we uncovered in our investigation, I want to take a quick pause for just a second to chat about something I see holding almost every woman on a fertility journey back, and she doesn't even realize she's doing it. And honestly, it's not really her fault, because the system has always been laser focused on the woman's body. So she ends up doing what high achieving women do best, right? She goes all in, fixing and optimizing and researching and tracking, figuring out what's wrong with her, right? And she ends up carrying both the physical and emotional weight of the entire journey on her own. And she ends up completely stressed and overwhelmed. Meanwhile, hubby is kind of on the sidelines, right? Present and supportive and doing his best, but not really actively in it with her, doing his own work, investigating how he might actually be the reason pregnancy isn't happening. And what I see over and over again in my practice is that the missing piece, the piece that genuinely changes everything, is getting both bodies in the room, both nervous systems in the room, because he is 50% of this baby-making equation. And that goes well beyond a biweekly swimmer deposit. And that's exactly what I do in my work with couples. And if you want to know what that actually looks like and whether it might be the missing piece for you, there's a link in the description below where you can apply for a partner discovery call. Both of you are together on that call from the very first conversation, because this is not a do-it-herself project, right? This is a do-it-together project. All right, so let's get back to the show. So we've already talked about what we found on Lindsay's labs, but what about Parker's, the other 50% in this baby-making equation? And in this particular case, there was a whole lot more going on with hubby than with wifey. Parker's stool testing showed significantly elevated levels of H. pylori, one of the most common gut infections in the world, and one that directly impairs digestion and nutrient absorption, lowers stomach acid, and creates a downstream cascade of problems throughout the entire body. I like to think of it as the gateway infection because of the domino effect it creates downstream. He also had significant bacterial overgrowth. His digestive enzyme production was super low, meaning that between the low stomach acid and the low enzyme production, he wasn't breaking down or absorbing nutrients from his food. And his secretory IgA, which is the front line of the immune system, was also really low. But the most significant finding was his mycotoxin panel. He had significant levels of ochratoxin A, same mycotoxin that Lindsay had. Now, this image right here that I put up on the screen shows how different mycotoxins can impact virtually every system of the entire body from head to toe. And what most people don't realize is that mold is known to cause over 200 different symptoms in the body. And ochratoxin A specifically, which remember Parker had significant levels of, impacts every single system of the body from head to toe. It's a neurotoxin. It causes oxidative stress, which is basically your cells rusting from the inside out. It damages the immune system, the liver, the kidneys, the GI tract. It's a potential carcinogen. And last but not least, ochratoxin A is a documented reproductive toxin. And to build on that picture, Parker's organic acids test also showed that he was actively colonized with mold. Again, not just exposed to it historically, but currently producing mycotoxins internally, just like Lindsay's was. His mitochondrial markers were low. His brain chemistry, the dopamine and serotonin, were also really low. His nutrients were depleted. His glutathione, the body's master detox agent, was also really low, meaning his body wasn't clearing toxins efficiently. So here's a man who's been living with brain fog and low motivation, not really feeling like himself, and wondering why he couldn't power through it. And what his labs were showing was a body that was genuinely under toxic siege and had been for a really long time. So here we have two people trying to make a baby together in bodies that are under toxic siege and chaos that wasn't being tested through conventional methods, which explains perfectly why the everything looks normal narrative wasn't exactly adding up for their story, right? Now, this is a part of the story that can be really heartbreaking and frustrating and really confusing for people to figure out because it illustrates something that I see all the time. Mold does not always look like the black mold that you see in horror movie basements. It can hide inside walls, under flooring, inside HVAC systems, inside houses that look completely normal on the surface. And let me be the first to tell you that living in a brand new house does not necessarily mean that there is no mold. It's very common. Lindsay and Parker had a beautiful new build home, 3 years old, brand new construction. And when they had it tested, it came back with significant mold. In their case, there was an issue with the HVAC unit. And every single time their AC fired up, it was circulating hundreds of thousands of mold spores throughout every inch of their house, their brand new house. Their 3-year-old daughter, who also lived in that home with them every single day, was also showing signs of exposure. She had respiratory issues, chronic constipation, constantly runny nose, allergies, behavioral tics. Those things are clues. I want you to hear that. Other people in your household, your kids, your partner, even your pets, showing symptoms that might seem completely unrelated are often clues that something in your shared environment is affecting everyone. And just a real quick personal side story, back in 2020, I moved into a beautiful condo in San Diego with my little Yorkie Maple. There was 0 visible mold, but both of us started having mold-related symptoms immediately after we moved in. I had respiratory issues, constant sneezing, brain fog, cognitive issues, confusion, blurry vision. I had depth perception issues, hair loss, swollen, itchy eyes, itchy skin. Maple had a constant air hunger, like she couldn't catch her breath. She was sneezing all the time. I almost ended up putting her through an unnecessary and really dangerous surgery for an elongated soft palate because the vet thought that's what was causing her to struggle for air. But I was convinced there was mold. So I was running organic acids and mycotoxin testing on myself like every 3 to 6 months. And every time I ran it, it kept showing increasing levels of toxic mold growing in my body, despite the constant detoxing work I was doing just to stay upright because it was coming in faster than my body could get it out. And as soon as we were out of that environment, all of our symptoms went away within weeks. So going back to Parker and Lindsay's story, to add fuel to the fire, during the time they'd been trying to conceive, Parker had been going to his elderly mom's house several evenings a week to help her clean out and downsize her old house. And it turns out that his mom's house also had significant mold. And every time he walked in the door, he was getting another hit of mold exposure on top of what he was already dealing with at home. But because he was digging through closets and moving things around, he was actively being exposed to hundreds of thousands of mold spores becoming airborne every time he disturbed something that had been sitting in the same spot for decades. So picture a sandstorm in the desert with, sand flying everywhere. That's like the mold spores. And nobody connected these dots because nobody thought to look at him. So I want to take a step back here and talk about why mold matters so specifically for fertility. Because I think when most people hear the word mold, they think about respiratory issues or skin rashes or feeling tired. They don't really think about infertility, but they should, because mycotoxins, the toxins that are produced by mold, are documented to cause over 200 different symptoms in the body from head to toe, like I mentioned earlier. 200. And here's where it gets really specific for fertility. Ochratoxin A, which is what both Lindsay and Parker had, is known to damage mitochondria. Mitochondria are the energy producers of every cell in the body. And egg cells specifically have the highest concentration of mitochondria of any cell in the human body. Because producing a healthy egg and sustaining early embryo development requires enormous amounts of cellular energy. So when mitochondria are damaged by mycotoxins, egg quality is going to suffer. Fertilization becomes harder. Early implantation becomes harder. Early pregnancy becomes harder to sustain. In men, mold toxins have been shown to affect sperm quality and sperm motility and sperm DNA integrity, which means even if the sperm count looks okay on a basic semen analysis, the quality of the genetic material inside that sperm may be compromised in ways that a standard test doesn't reveal. Mold also suppresses the immune system and drives systemic inflammation, both of which affect the body's ability to support implantation and early pregnancy. And it disrupts the gut lining, which is where hormones are metabolized and where the immune system is largely housed. Gut damage from mold leads to hormone disruption. Hormone disruption leads to irregular cycles, poor ovulation quality, thin uterine lining, shortened luteal phases. And all of this, every single piece of it, is operating completely below the radar of a conventional fertility workup. Your RE is not testing for mycotoxins. Your OBGYN is not testing for mold colonization. And still, almost nobody is testing him. I also want to address another really important elephant in the room here, because there is a camp out there that says, forget the gut, forget the infections, forget the mold, just calm your nervous system and your body will do the rest. And they're not entirely wrong. A regulated nervous system is absolutely foundational and critical to fertility. I talk about this all the time. But here's what that nervous system only camp is missing. Mold is not just a physical toxin. It is a biological stressor that directly dysregulates the nervous system. It drives neuroinflammation. It depletes the neurotransmitters that your nervous system runs on. It keeps your body locked in that stuck, dysregulated nervous system state that no amount of breath work or mindset work can fully override. Because the source of the dysregulation is still living inside your walls and possibly inside your body. You cannot think your way out of a mold toxic body, which is exactly why I sit at the intersection of functional medicine and nervous system rewiring, because you need both. Not one or the other, both. Now I want to add something here that I think is really important for anyone who has been in the functional medicine space for a while and maybe feels like they've already gone down this road. A lot of couples come to me having already done some functional medicine work. They've run some labs, they've found some things, right? They've done protocols, and they're still not pregnant. And what I usually find is one or two things. Either they found the right root causes but went about addressing them in the wrong sequence or missed some really crucial things entirely. So they were effectively chasing the right rabbits but going about catching them the wrong way. The order of operations matters. The strategy matters. And getting both wrong means staying stuck even when you're doing the work. Or they found some of the rabbits but not all of them. And the ones they missed, often because nobody thought to look at his body, or they were focusing on the wrong testing entirely, those are the ones that are still driving the problem. This is why I always say unexplained infertility does not mean unexplainable. And it certainly doesn't mean a life sentence. It means we just haven't been looking in the right places. or maybe even at the right person. So when we addressed both Lindsay and Parker together, detoxing both of them from the mold, repairing the gut lining, addressing the H. pylori and the other gut infections, improving nutrient absorption, decreasing systemic inflammation, supporting both of their mitochondria and neurotransmitter production, and when they did the mold remediation on their home to remove the ongoing source of exposure, Lindsay got pregnant, naturally and pretty quickly. And they welcomed a healthy baby boy into their family. And aside from just having their baby, Parker had more energy. He had his motivation back, no more brain fog. Lindsay had more energy, more mental clarity, significantly less anxiety, and no more gut issues and constipation, right? And from a deeper perspective, here's what this really meant. It meant that they became two healthy, happy, aligned parents. Two people who were ready to fully enjoy the experience of raising their growing family together in a healthy home. And this is where I think that I have one of the best jobs in the entire world, because I truly believe that when we have more healthy, happy, grounded, and aligned parents raising children in safe, cohesive, joyful homes, that's how we change the frequency of the entire freaking world. Right? One family at a time. And honestly, in today's world, we desperately need more of that. We need more aligned, healthy, happy parents raising families together as a team in healthy bodies and healthy marriages. We need more parents who are fully present and enjoying the experience of parenthood. So from my perspective, the end goal is never just the pregnancy. We want more healthy, happy, safe homes for kids to grow up in. It's how we change this world together. So what does Lindsay and Parker's story mean for you and your fertility journey? It means that if you've been doing all the right things and still don't have your answer, it's worth asking whether you've been looking in the right places. Have you tested for things other than your hormones or standard blood work? Has your partner been tested? Not just a semen analysis, which is the only thing most fertility clinics ever run on a man. I mean a comprehensive functional panel. Gut health, mycotoxins, organic acids, nutritional status, his mitochondria, his neurotransmitters, his detox pathways. And another thing that I encourage you to ask yourself is, are the symptoms that you or your partner or your children are living with being read as clues? Or are they being looked at as completely unrelated separate problems, right? Chronic constipation, brain fog, fatigue, anxiety, low motivation, allergies, recurring infections, skin issues, gut issues, crappy sleep, headaches. Any one of these symptoms on its own might seem completely unrelated to fertility. You might even have come to think of them as your normal, but they're not disconnected. Your body is one miraculous, wildly intelligent, interconnected system. And when something is off somewhere, it's rarely off in just one place. The dots are there. They just need someone who knows how to connect them. All right, if you heard pieces of yourself or your partner in what I just shared in this episode, if you had a light bulb moment or even some validation of what your intuition has been telling you, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment for me down below on YouTube and tell me what landed for you. Like, what have you been dismissing as unrelated that might actually be a clue? Or what has your intuition been telling you that you haven't been listening to? Tell me, because I'm nosy and I want to know what lands for you. Also, do me a favor and let me know what other topics you'd love me to make an episode about. And if you're ready to look at the full picture, both of you together with someone who knows exactly where to look, it starts with a conversation. I've got a link to the application for my partner discovery call in the description down below. If you're compelled and it feels like the right next move for you, hit that link, fill out the application, and get on my schedule. I've also got some additional resources linked in the description, and my free masterclass for couples is in the works. I'll let you know when that's live, and I'll link it below when it's ready. If you know a couple that's been trying to conceive and they're feeling hopeless, send this to them. Sharing is how we get this information in front of the people who really need it the most. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when new episodes go live. Leave me a rating and a review if you're listening on one of the audio platforms. Thank you a gazillion times over for listening. It means the world to me. I love you. I mean it. And I'll see you in the next episode.